when I ran for this seat as town supervisor, I had some opposition within the local Republican Party, which was basically just people put their name out there, and the Republican committee interviews each of the candidates that want to run for town supervisor or councilman or judge. And then the committee of 62 votes on who they want to support and give the endorsement of the Republican committee to. And I won that endorsement in a 2-to-1 vote. And then ran for supervisor unopposed with no Democrat opposition.
So going back, so you ran against the incumbent mayor in Greenwood Lake who had appointed you?
Correct.
Okay, so why did you do that?
I was a young guy, and I wanted to do some good things for our village and our community. And the mayor and I had two different styles of leadership, two vastly different styles. Her style was a very iron-fisted, her way or no way, and there was no way that I was going to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish as a trustee with her there. And for example, creating a youth center, a teen center for the kids in our community. Having grown up in Greenwood Lake where she did not, I felt I knew better what the kids needed in the community. And anytime I brought up an initiative or wanted to do something, it would get shot down. And I basically said to her, I'm not doing this for nothing. I'm doing this for the right reasons, and I want to do this to make the community better, and you're basically getting in the way. And then every board meeting would be contentious, and it would be me arguing with her, and it would be very difficult to navigate. And then it was also brought to me that she was doing things inappropriately, right? There was some illegal discharging of water from our water treatment plant. Money that had been spent where it shouldn't have been spent. So different things that I picked up as a village trustee, which is a board member, that I thought were very irresponsible. And
so you noticed those things going on?
Yeah, I noticed them, and also that they were brought to me. So the one piece of information about the illegal discharge of the water was brought to me by the water operator, because he knew that I was the only one on the board that was standing up to her, that I was doing things for the right reasons, and I would not give up. I was really advocating for the community and really trying hard, and it was a very stressful time for me. One thing that was great out of the whole entire thing, it was incredible. So I think at that time when I was running for mayor, I was 26, turning 26 to 27, and so I'm a fairly young guy, right? And we had to debate each other in the elementary school, and I think there were 400 or 500 people there that were present for this debate. And it was me, the young, new trustee, versus the mayor, who was, very smart, very savvy, and skilled. And I brought that out to the public that day. I brought that she had been discharging water illegally. And I had asked the water operator, I said, Phil, you know that if I bring this out, you could get fired if I lose. And he said, it doesn't matter, it's got to get out. So he risked his job to help me make our community better, make our community safer. And really, he didn't care about winning elections. He wanted to do what was right. And that was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. And I just met with a group of youth leadership kids in the town of Warwick the other day, and I explained them this whole situation, debating the mayor in front of an audience of 400 of your peers and neighbors, and how stressful it was and what kind of a challenge it was to do. But really, it was fighting for what you believe in and doing what it takes to get the job done. It was a great experience.
So, and what was she interested in having a youth center, or what was her angle on it?
I'm sure she was interested, but she wanted to do it herself. She didn't want it to be my idea. She didn't want me to champion it. And then, of course, the first thing that I did within the first year of me being mayor was I opened up a community/youth center in an old firehouse, and it's still active today, 12 years later.
And so what sorts of things were on her mind to do what were the things that she was
It seemed like she was more focused on beautification projects. She almost wanted to transform the community into where she came from, which is Bergen County. And Greenwood Lake is a unique place. It's one of the most beautiful communities in the state, nestled between two mountains, state park, Appalachian Trail, 9 Mile Lake, the largest lake in Orange County. and it's got this downtown with incredible history going back to Babe Ruth and Native Americans, and but it's got a good mix of people. It's got a mix of old school people that were here when the boxers were there, and the bars. We had more bars per square mile than any other place in the country. We were in the Guinness Book of Records because in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, the drinking age in New York was 18 or 19, and it was 21 everywhere else. So people would come here in Greenwood Lake because it was the closest part to Jersey and New York City. They would come there and they would drink, and it just turned into a really interesting, unique resort bar playground almost for a lot of people. So you had a mix, and you still have that mix of people that want to preserve the character of Greenwood Lake, keep it the way it is, keep the charm, keep the old historic buildings. And then you've got another segment of the community which, they want thriving businesses, they want new shops, they want a nicer downtown, they want different businesses. They're not so concerned about the history side of it. And the tough part about being mayor is finding the balance and making sure that you're representing the entirety of the community. And she didn't want to represent the one side of the community. She only wanted to represent the newer and the forward thinking. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to making progress or making change, but I think you cannot ignore the other segment of the community. And you have to some degree, preserve the integrity and the character of your community, no matter where you are. So she had a way of completely dismissing an entire side of the community. And that's why they came out and overwhelmingly supported me. And I took that very seriously. I took that commitment to being open, transparent, and inclusive from all perspectives. I took that not only during my time as mayor, but I take that into this job as town supervisor. Because even more so in the town level, we have 3 villages, we have countless hamlets. It's the biggest town in Orange County, over 100 square miles. You have so many different unique identities within the town of Warwick that you have to keep in mind that they're not all going to be the same. They're not all going to agree on the same issues. They're going to have unique perspectives. They're going to have differences of opinion. And I think it's incredibly important as a town supervisor, as the CEO of this local government, to take in and consider all opinions and all perspectives. You don't have to legislate or govern based on all of their opinions, but you certainly have to take it into consideration and reflect on it as you make your decisions throughout your time here.
So the people who were interested in preserving history in Greenwood Lake, can you give an example of what they wanted that was opposed to what the progressives wanted?
Yeah, I can give you a perfect example. Okay. So we've got a place called Grex. And it's an old building. Babe Ruth had his own room in the upstairs of Grex. It's an incredibly historic looking building right on the lake. And it was purchased by a steakhouse, a 5-star steakhouse in Manhattan, an incredible place. They've got a steakhouse in Westchester and one in Manhattan. And this building is iconic Greenwood Lake. It is truly what Greenwood Lake used to look like, and used to be an old resort, old character building with incredible history. And people can remember having their bridal showers and their communion parties there going back 100 years. And the divide really was that people wanted to preserve this building, keep it the way it is, and they don't want this new steakhouse coming in. It's a perfect example of the split in the community. And what's tough about this particular situation is that the previous owner of this building, they let it go so far. There's a hotel component. It was being used for Section 8 housing. They completely let it go, and it was just turned into a blight within the neighborhood. So from a government standpoint, you have to acknowledge that, yes, we would love to maintain this history. We would love to keep it, but how do you keep a blight in the community just for the sake of preserving its history? Nobody has come in to fix it up. Nobody has come in to buy it. No one has come in to turn it into a restaurant and preserve the character of what it has. So you've got an investor that wants to come in. He's going to completely transform it, knock it down, and turn it into a newer, high-end steakhouse. Very tough balance to make. But the argument that we made was that it's unsavable. You cannot salvage the building. It was gutted and left to erode, and it's really beyond repair. So that was really a clear divide in showing one side that literally wanted to keep a decrepit, overgrown building just for the sake of preserving history, versus another side that said, listen, there's nothing we can do about that. We need businesses to come to Greenwood Lake. We need commerce here. We need investment here. A business like that will help those other businesses on our main street. It'll bring people here with money. And then you've got people that say, we don't want people to come here with money. I have my house, I have my yard, I have my pizza place and my coffee shop. I don't need anybody to come here with money. It's not for me. It's not going to help me. And your job as a mayor or a town supervisor is to sort through the middle and find what makes the most sense. What will bring you to the next 10 years, 20 years in your community? What will transform your community into what the overall majority will want to see in your community, in your village or your town? And that was a tough thing to navigate. And that was during my time that the steakhouse was coming. But again, it was really trying to balance the needs of everybody. And I think communication and how you treat people is very important in these roles. Respecting people, taking their opinion, and having compassion is very important. She didn't have that. She didn't have a good way of speaking to people, and very arrogant and pompous, and didn't fit the character of our community. And she ultimately, right after I won, she moved back to Jersey. So
the steakhouse took over.
They took over. They bought it. They're going to the plant. They started the planning board process while I was mayor. And then I think they just got their final approvals a couple of months ago.
Oh, it's that steakhouse that's in progress now.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the backstory.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
You're getting a lot of good stuff here. You're getting some good inside baseball.
Yeah. Okay, because I've heard references to it, and now I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Okay, so coming to so do you want to sort of capsulize what you feel like you accomplished then in Greenwood Lake before we move on to the town?
Yeah. One of the main focuses that I had in Greenwood Lake was very similar to what my focus is as town supervisor, and that's to find grant money to help offset expenses and costs to support an aging infrastructure, parks, and general services for the village. I don't remember exactly how much, but it was somewhere around $20 million in grants. We got grant money for our water system, $3 million in grants. We got money to build new parks. We built a passive boat launch. We took over a piece of vacant land that was owned by the county. It was an old roadway bed, and we completely converted that into a public park and a passive boat launch. We created the teen center from an old firehouse, and it's now used every single day by our local kids as well as our nonprofit organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts. We created a community garden. We worked with a public-private partnership nonprofit to take village land and open up the village's first dog park. We invested heavily in the lake, constantly cleaned up the lake, and really tried to provide the services that our residents expected while offsetting the costs with grant funding. And it was a really good strategy because it created access to a lot of funding to support the community and support the needs of the residents while not having to tax them beyond their means and beyond their capability. And I kind of have the same model with the town. I'm going to use that same approach.
So and so, where do you think Greenwood Lake still needs to go? What needs to be done there?
Greenwood Lake has long struggled to maintain a strong downtown, and one of the reasons for that is there's no sewer system in the village of Greenwood Lake, whereas in the village of Warwick, the village of Florida, the village of Goshen, they all have downtown sewer. And with sewer, you're able to have a more mixed-use downtown. You can have the retail below and the apartments above, and you can support different types of businesses that create that downtown effect. And Greenwood Lake has really had a tough time maintaining businesses in the downtown, creating a walkable downtown, and having a really good business district downtown. Our restaurants that are on the lake, they do great. They're always going to do great. You have boats. The boat traffic has increased dramatically since COVID. COVID had an enormous impact on our local real estate market, on our businesses, from downtown to the lakes, everywhere. But I think Greenwood Lake...
Why? Because it brought people to Greenwood Lake?
Yeah, when people were telecommuting, they would, whether you worked in North Jersey, Westchester, or the city, during COVID, you could essentially work from anywhere in the world as long as you had internet. So what people were doing, and this was a big short-term rental boom in Greenwood Lake and in Warwick, people were renting their houses, and people that would ordinarily work in an office in Manhattan would be here in Greenwood Lake. They would buy a boat, they would spend money in the local restaurants, and they would work from home, essentially. One of the other things that I did as mayor, working with our village board, was we created one of the very first short-term rental laws in the state. And that law has since become a model for many municipalities across the state. And we did that before COVID, before short-term rentals were as large as they are now. I think we ended up doing this in 2018 or 2017. So we had noticed that there were some Airbnbs popping up, and we had noticed that it was becoming a little bit of a problem between parking and garbage and some noise issues. So we created a rental registration law requiring anyone who wanted to rent their short-term rental, their house as a short-term rental, they had to fill out a permit and notify the village of their intent and follow a certain set of rules, because essentially you're operating a commercial business in a residential neighborhood. 99% of these Airbnbs, they're not owner occupied. The owner is somewhere else, or it's an investment property, whatever the case may be. You've got complete strangers moving in and out of a residential neighborhood as if it's a hotel. So we wanted to regulate that. We wanted to make our community safer. We wanted to make our neighborhood safer, and we did that. And shortly thereafter, the town adopted a similar model as ours, and we just recently made updates to the short-term rental code at the town board meeting.
Huh. And so in what way was it updated? Well, improved?
There were some flaws that we identified in the first 6 months being here, working with the building department and the town attorney. For example, the registration requirement did not require you to specify the individual owners if it's LLC owned. We found that a lot of investment companies are buying houses and buying properties and turning them into short-term rentals. And what they'll do is they'll register it under an LLC. All right, well, if there's a violation, where do you send the violation to? An LLC, a PO box? We have nobody to bring to court to actually enforce the laws and the rules that we have here. So we did that. We changed the fee and the fine structure to make it more flexible for the town to impose fines, because we're really holding these people accountable. We feel that they're going to enter into a commercial venture in a residential neighborhood. They need to be prepared to follow the rules, and if they don't, there will be consequences. And they're making so much money on these Airbnbs that the fee structure and the fines were just not keeping up with the times. The other flaw we noticed was that we had in the town law a revocation clause where the town had the ability to revoke a permit if someone operated against our rules or against our laws. But the flaw was that they would be able to go to the town board, apply to the town board for a hearing, a revocation hearing, so that the town board would hear their case and make a determination as to whether or not the permit would stay revoked or not. The flaw was that as soon as they applied to the town board to have the revocation hearing, they're now outside of the stay and they can begin renting again until they have that hearing.
Oh.
It was crazy. I think it was just a flaw that should have never happened. It was not designed that way. So we corrected that to basically make sure that if we revoke it, if the building department revokes a short-term rental permit, it is fully revoked until that is reversed by the town board. So things like that, really just, taking a look at the law and making it meet the needs of today, because we're in a rapidly evolving world. Everything, even the town is evolving so quickly.